I recently opened a taxable investment account for the very first time. Now, a taxable investment account, which is also sometimes called a non-registered investment account, is basically just a standard brokerage account. So standard investment account that you can purchase investments inside of. It's called a taxable investment account because there's no tax benefits associated with the account. So basically you put money into the account, you purchase investments with that money, and then you pay taxes on the growth of that money. And I'll talk more about how that actually works in a second. Now, there are tax-advantaged investment accounts that exist too. Those are also sometimes called registered investment accounts. Now, they're basically exactly the opposite of taxable investment accounts because they do have tax benefits that are associated with them. There are a few different tax-advantaged investment accounts available in Canada specifically, including the TFSA or the tax-free savings account, the FHSA or the first home savings account, and the RRSP or the registered retirement savings plan. Now, all of those different accounts offer you different tax benefits that all allow you to reduce the amount of money that you're paying in taxes by using these accounts for their intended purposes. Now, because of those tax benefits, they all have a set cap called a contribution limit, and you can't go past that point with your contributions. Now, because of that, they're all registered with the Canadian government so that they make sure that you're not going past those caps. Now, it's usually ideal to max out or invest up to those set limits, your tax-advantaged investment accounts first, so that you can actually capitalize off of those tax benefits, which is exactly what I did. I personally started with my TFSA, and then once that was maxed out, I moved on to my FHSA, and then once that was maxed out, I moved on to my RRSP. Now I'm officially only 1 month away from maxing out my RRSP, and I'm officially run out of tax-advantaged investment accounts to open up next. But I can and did open up a taxable investment account instead. Like I touched on, a taxable investment account has no rules or conditions, so anyone can open one up at any time. Now, with that being said, technically there is actually one rule. It's that you have to be at least 18 years old in order to open one. So any adult can open one. Now, once you go ahead and open one, you can actually invest an unlimited amount of money. You don't have to keep track of any maximum limit. You can also withdraw or take out your money at any time for any reason. There's no penalty or fee for withdrawing your money. Just overall, it's a very flexible account. Now, with that being said, the only reason that I haven't opened up one of these accounts yet is because I was so focused on filling up the accounts that give me tax benefits first, which has worked out very great for me so far. I'm gonna start by talking about my TFSA, which is currently full right now, and in my opinion, it's the best investment account that we have available to us in Canada. Other than it having a cap, so that max contribution limit, there aren't that many rules with this account either. You can put money into the account, you can then buy investments with that money, and then let those investments grow, hopefully, for many, many years, and then eventually take money out of the account. And when you go to take money out of the account, including all of that growth, you can do that without paying any taxes on that money. And that's why it's the best account in my opinion, because you get all of that flexibility, but you also don't have to pay any taxes. That's also the reason why Dennis and I use our TFSAs for long-term investing specifically, because ideally we'll continue to contribute to this account, and after 30 years, we'll have contributed around $360,000, but the value of our TFSAs will be at over $2 million. Now you can see from our investment calculator that we have on screen that that's just a projection, but it's a very real possibility that we'll see an 8% return on our investments over that long period of time. And that also means that once we do hit retirement, we can continuously pull from that $2 million without paying any taxes on that money. And keep in mind that that amount is each, not combined. Also, because I opened up my TFSA and maxed it out first, so it's been a handful of years now, we can actually see that it's already started to grow. So if I pull up my investment platform and go into my TFSA, you can see that I've only contributed, or I can tell you that I've only contributed $76,500 because that's my max contribution. But the value of my account right now is at $91,213. So it's currently up 19.9% all time, or over $15,000 of growth that I've seen. And that's just over the short term. And keep in mind that the stock market's also been going up and down over the past few months, especially. So there's more to come over the next 30 years. This is just that short-term period of like 3 to 5 years of growth. And again, that's just my TFSA. I've also invested inside of and maxed out both my FHSA and my RRSP. Now, both of those accounts have also given me short-term benefits already. My combined contribution room, so that max amount that I have inside of my FHSA and RRSP combined, is $77,985, and all of that contribution room can be used to reduce my taxable income once I actually contribute the money. So for example, in the 2024 tax year, I contributed about $50,000 to those two accounts, which means that I was able to reduce my taxable income from about $70,000 all the way down to about $20,000. And with that, I was able to receive a big tax refund. Then I invested the majority of that tax refund, about $10,000, so I was able to put even more money back into my investments that way. Now, those are just a few of the tax benefits that I've actually been able to see myself and also anticipate inside of these registered investment accounts. And I really wanted to highlight the why behind why I've chosen to hold off on opening up a taxable investment account until now. Okay, so enough suspense. Since I maxed out my TFSA, FHSA, and RRSP, it was officially time for me to open up and use a taxable investment account next. Now, even though there's no tax benefits with this account, it's still great that there's at least another option available for us to invest with. So it's a pretty straightforward process. First, you pick an investment platform that allows you to open up a taxable investment account, and most investment platforms or brokerages should definitely have this option, and then you actually open up the account. After that, you transfer money into this account just like you would with any other type of bank or investment account, and you can start purchasing investments inside of the account with that money. But there are two main differences for taxable investing specifically. Now, the first is that you have to keep track of something called your adjusted cost base when you're investing inside of a taxable account. And the second is that you have to pay taxes on the profits that you make from your investments. Now, let's actually start by talking about that second point. So when you make a profit and receive money from your investments inside of a taxable account, you're going to be taxed. And there are 3 different ways that you can be taxed. The first is when you sell a stock or an ETF or another investment and make a profit. That's called a capital gain. The second is when you receive interest on a taxable bond or another investment. That's called an interest payment. And the third is when you receive a dividend, which is when a stock or an ETF pays you out a set amount of money every month, quarter, or year. And that's called a dividend payment. So all of these different ways of earning money from your investments can and will be taxed inside of a taxable account. Now, I also want to highlight how capital gains specifically works in Canada, because there's some rules and things for you to know about that. So 50% of the value of any capital gains are taxable. So really simple high-level example, let's say that you sold an investment and you made $50 from that sale. $25, or 50% of that, you'd have to add to your taxable income for that year that you sold the investment in. And in general, you pay your taxes on all these different ways of making money from your investments at tax time when you file your tax return for the past year. So for example, let's say that you sold a stock in 2025. When it comes time to file your 2025 tax return the next year, that's when you'd pay that 50% capital gains tax. And it works the same way for interest and dividend payments too. Okay, so that covers when you're taxed, but how do you know how much you owe in taxes? That brings me back to the first point, which is that you have to keep track of something called your adjusted cost base when you're investing inside of a taxable investment account. Now, if you're a do-it-yourself or DIY investor, which means that you're investing completely on your own, just like I am, then that means that keeping track of your ACB, which is the acronym for adjusted cost base, is completely your responsibility. It's kind of like keeping track of your maximum contribution limit for your tax-advantaged investment accounts is your responsibility too. I also want to point out that keeping track of your adjusted cost base is something that you only have to do inside of a taxable investment account, which is why this is the very first time that I'm going to have to start keeping track of it myself now that I've opened up a taxable account. You also have to keep track of it no matter what investment you're purchasing inside or investments you're purchasing inside of your account, taxable account again specifically, but it's a little bit more straightforward when you're only purchasing a few ETFs like I am. So here's how it works. So you have to keep track of the original cost of your investments, and then you have to adjust that cost base upwards for any new purchases, so any lump sums or dividend reinvestments, and you'd have to adjust the cost base downwards for any sales. Now, the reason you have to do this is because if you don't adjust your cost base upwards, you would pay too much in taxes when you go to sell your investment. And on the other hand, if you don't adjust your cost base downwards, then you'll pay too little in taxes when you go to sell your investment. And that could get you in a lot of trouble with the CRA. In general, it's important to keep track of this at the very least on an annual basis because it comes into play when you go to file your personal income tax return every single year. So let's go ahead and make all of this a little bit more simple and talk about how it's applicable to me and my taxable investment account specifically. So for me, I'm not going to be selling any investments inside of any of my long-term investing accounts for many, many years. At least that's the plan as of right now. So that's what we're going with. And that includes my taxable investment account. So I don't need to worry about keeping track of sales since I won't be selling, but I do need to keep track of every time I purchase an ETF, anytime I receive dividends from that ETF, and when those dividends are reinvested. So basically when I actually purchase more shares of that ETF from the dividend payments that I receive. So I need to gather all of that required information from my taxable account statement, including the account activity section, and that should be what covers any of the purchases or dividend reinvestments that I made throughout the year. I can also see that activity anytime I want to by going into the investment platform app that I use, then going to the activity tab. So everything that you can see on here should be included in that taxable account statement too. Now, there is also another step to this, which is return of capital distribution. That's basically when the ETF or ETFs that you invest in pay you a portion of your original investment back instead of a portion of the fund's earnings. Now, that might sound a little bit more complex. You don't really have to worry about that as an investor, except for when you're tracking your ACB. Now, with all of that being said, this is something that I'm gonna have to start doing now that I'm investing inside of a taxable investment account. We can do another video on this topic that's more in depth and actually walks you through the exact method that I'm gonna be using to track and calculate my ACB. So if you're interested in that, make sure you let us know down below in the comments. Okay, so back to me actually opening up my taxable investment account. Now, if you've been following along on my investing journey, then you know that right now, I currently use Wealthsimple's self-directed platform. So basically that's an investment platform that allows me to invest on my own. So you can actually see that I have my TFSA, my FHSA, and my RRSP all on the Wealthsimple platform. So those are all the accounts right here. And then when I went to open up a taxable or non-registered account, it was very straightforward. I just clicked add account and then opened one up, and it only took me a few seconds. So with that step out of the way, the only real decision for me to make is what was I going to invest in inside of my taxable investment account. Now, in general, Dennis and I both invest in globally diversified funds that track the stock market. So we passively invest in ETFs that are made up of stocks that are based in countries all over the world. Now, with that being said, I currently invest in 2 different ETFs. The first one is XEQT, which is an all-in-one ETF. An all-in-one ETF is basically an ETF that's made up of multiple other ETFs. And XEQT specifically has 5 different ETFs inside of it. There's ITOT, which covers the total US stock market. There's also XEF, which covers the international stock market. There's XIC, which covers the Canadian stock market. Then there's XUS, which is the S&P 500 specifically, so more US exposure there. And then there's also XCC, which is the emerging markets. Now, I chose this ETF because it keeps things really simple. I just make this one purchase, but by doing that, I'm actually purchasing 5 different ETFs that lets me get that global diversification. So I started purchasing this ETF in my TFSA first, and then my FHSA, and then I actually started to change things up once I opened up my RRSP. Now, I still wanted to passively invest with global diversification, but I personally felt like XEQT had a bit too much Canadian exposure for me at 25%. Now, keep in mind that Canada only makes up about 2 to 3% of the global stock market. I already only invest in Canadian listed ETFs and Canadian dollars. So I decided to start investing in VXC2. Now, VXC is still a passive ETF that's globally diversified. We'll actually throw up a graphic on screen so you can see the geographic breakdown, but it's made up of about 64% US stocks, and the rest of it is stocks from other countries around the world, but it excludes Canada altogether. So if you look at my overall stock market investment portfolio now across all of my different investment accounts, I've increased the exposure that I have to US stocks and decreased the percentage of Canadian stocks that I have, which is what I was looking for. Now, with all of that being said, my plan for my taxable investment account is to continue to purchase VXC. For now, the majority of my portfolio overall is still in XQT, so I want to continue to up the amount of shares of VXC that I have, again, across all of my different investment accounts. So that's the plan for now. I might change things up slightly at some point, but as of right now, in my taxable investment account, I'm going to be investing in the ETF VXC. So right now, it's about to be June, which means that my $2,000 monthly investment contribution, which by the way is the amount that I invest every single month from my monthly income, that's going to be going towards my RRSP for the very last time for this year, at least until I get more contribution room in the new year. And by the way, technically only $1,985 of it is going towards my RRSP since that's all the contribution room that I have left. Then in July, August, September, October, November, and December of this year, that $2,000 monthly investment contribution will go into my taxable investment account instead, which means that I should have invested $12,000 in there by the end of 2025. Then next year, I'll go back to remaxing out my tax-advantaged investment accounts, so the TFSA, FHSA, and RRSP. And if I'm able to do that before the end of the year in 2026, then I'll go back to investing inside of my taxable account, and I'll just do that every year moving forward in that order. I'll also make sure to keep you guys updated if anything in that plan ever changes, so make sure you subscribe to see those updates. Also, I wanted to remind you guys that we cover exactly how you can start investing in our course, Simple Investing for Canadians. The course covers everything that you need to know in order to start investing in the stock market this simple way. There's dozens of video lessons, there's test your knowledge quizzes, there's different downloadable resources, there's a personalized investing game plan that you get that's tailored to you, and you also get added to our private community where you get priority access to myself and Dennis. You can find more information and also the link to sign up for Simple Investing for Canadians in the description box down below, so make sure you check that out, and we'll be back next week with another video.